Good morning, everyone. Today we'll look into the final part 3 of how family as a support system can take care of these long-term psychiatric patients. Here today I am mainly referring to conditions like schizophrenia, long-term depression, and anxiety conditions, and anything psychiatric, or even for that matter, physical, long-term chronic physical illnesses can follow to some extent what is explained in this video. So kindly look into the practical aspects of what I am going to talk today. So here, mainly coming to the schizophrenia, a lot of research and scientific papers are mainly on schizophrenia, a condition. It is a long-term, very debilitating and a long-term psychiatric condition, schizophrenia. So here, the patients who are diagnosed with this condition usually have long-term effects of the symptoms. We'll look into the symptoms a little later. Basically, they usually, as per the statistics goes, 25% out of 100 people, 25% who has diagnosed to have, if 100 people are diagnosed to have schizophrenia, 25% of them might not have more than one episode, and they might actually recover fully after the first episode. 50% of the people might have a moderate recovery where the symptoms might be at a stable state but still requiring help. Whereas 25% of the psychiatric patients, especially who are diagnosed with schizophrenia, might have relapses, and the symptoms might actually continue to a long-term chronic kind of level. So on the whole, if you look at majority of these kind of clients who are diagnosed with schizophrenia, more than 75% of them require long-term medication, as well as a very significant aspect of today's speech, that is about the need for family interventions. So looking at very briefly what symptoms that kind of indicate that the person might have a schizophrenia. So mainly the symptoms where the persons are completely in a state of disconnected to their reality, even though that is not alone the symptom that can diagnose schizophrenia. There are very specific symptoms given by the World Health Organization. Here, they hear active voices, we call them auditory hallucinations. They hear voices of people either talking to them directly, sometimes they are talking in a very derogatory voice, or trying to put them down, or trying to blame them, or trying to provoke guilt. These voices are mostly imaginary, maybe from the familiar that the person know. These kind of people can recognize the voices of the people. Sometimes it can be unfamiliar. So hearing voices, the auditory hallucinations, and they also have disturbances in their thoughts. So they think that someone is trying to conspire against them, or they might think that they are trying to steal their data or personal information through WhatsApp or emails, or all these internet kind of stuff, and then they keep a watch. They are very guarded in using all these kind of appliances, and they have these feelings that someone might be harming, or someone might be trying to hurt them in some way, or mix poison in their food, or they often try to check whether the food is healthy to eat or these kind of stuff. So they are continuously, bothered by these kind of thoughts. Most of them are imaginal, but for them it is a reality, and it often makes the family members very confusing, and then feel helpless as to what is happening to the family member and how they can help. So these are all called as positive symptoms. There are a set of negative symptoms. Once the active symptoms that I have described about hearing voices or thought disturbances, the fear of harm or fear of someone trying to talk behind them, something derogatory or something degrading talk that might happen about them, the suspiciousness, all these are the positive symptoms. Once these symptoms come down, when the symptoms become a little less intense with the medication, and sometimes there can be a spontaneous remission of the symptoms. Usually there will be symptoms for 4 to 5 months intensity, and then the episode might come. In some of them, the symptoms might continue like a continuous illness. So it can be episode or it can be a continuous form of illness. Once the severity of these kind of symptoms comes down, there are a possibility or there are negative symptoms mostly associated with kind of lack of motivation in day-to-day activities, feeling very low and depressed. There can be a kind of self-harm, kind of suicidal kind of thought process running in their minds. They cannot emotionally connect to the family members, and then there can be a complete lethargy, a lot of lazy kind of, which is perceived to be something that the patient is very lazy, but they are more, because of the medication effect, they are more sleepy, lying on the bed all through the day, being non-productive and unable to contribute to the family. So all these symptoms get into the negative symptoms. So looking at what can help these kind of clients. So medications, psychiatric medications are very important in these kind of clients, and then they usually help them to kind of reduce their anxiety, become less agitated, more calmer, and much more functional than when they are the continuous symptoms make them completely disturbed in carrying out their kind of whatever based on their age. If they are student, unable to focus on their academics. If they are employed, or if they are working or having a business, they are unable to focus on the details of the job and unable to connect to the interpersonal conversations that are happening, and having a significant effect on their occupational area, be it academics or be it career related area. So it is important for the family members that the medication plays a very vital role in these kind of patients, which help them to kind of calm down, decrease their agitation, all these active symptoms of hearing voices and the fear of harm continuously. Having these kind of thoughts can make the person much more kind of distressing, and then it is very difficult for them to carry on their day-to-day life. So the medication plays a very important role in bringing down all these, and they usually take 3 to 4 weeks of time to act on the symptoms. So using for a week or 2 weeks does not bring a drastic change in their symptoms, because it takes time for the medication to actually help settle the brain neurochemicals that are actually imbalanced or disturbed. So looking at the other important aspects, like looking at what causes these kind of deteriorating and long-term illnesses. The causes in most of the psychological and psychiatric conditions are threefold. One is the biological causes where there is a vulnerability factor. Vulnerability does not mean that if there is a family history, immediately the other people in the family can get. It is a combination of the expressed emotions that we have discussed in our part 2. Those who have not followed, kindly look into it. And the kind of family interactions and the various factors that we have discussed in the part 1, all these factors put together bring the heredity possibilities into, make the person more vulnerable. As long as there is a healthy family environment, maintained open communication system and healthy problem solving abilities, then it's not necessarily that if there is a heredity factor that the person, the offspring should always get it. So a lot of family factors, a lot of interactions, and then the social factors contribute to the vulnerability to come out as unexpressed symptoms. So keeping this in view, looking at how a family intervention, or how important what a family intervention does, how family counseling helps these kind of clients. Like I said, medication plays a very important role in bringing down the positive symptoms, and then the caretakers, or usually if it is a child, usually the adolescent, most of the symptoms are affected in the productive age. Most of the symptoms starts appearing in the productive age, teenage to young adult, and very rarely after 45-50 years. So here the productive years of the person's life are severely affected, be it academics or be it career planning or career growth. So it is the parents who usually are the caretakers, and when they are grown up, it is usually the sibling who will be the caretaker, where they need the medication. The medication follow at regular intervals plays a very important role in keeping the possibility of preventing the possibility of the relapse. We have spoken about what a relapse is, and then what are the different factors that can contribute the relapse in part 2. Kindly, those who have not seen, try to follow that before you actually watch this video. And coming to the family interventions, what happens in these family sessions? So family sessions are mainly for the patient when the symptoms come down, when the severity of the positive symptoms come down, involving a significant caretaker, 1 or 2 family members, where the family interventions, mainly the focus is on the continuation of the medication and regular follow-ups. So when the patient is reluctant to use the medication, it is important to reason with the client based on their education level and based on their cooperation, how it is important to take the medication. If they are not cooperative, there are other ways of making them continue the medication by changing it from oral medication to the injection form, or sometimes they might need a hospitalization for a few weeks in order to bring back, or in order to stabilize the symptoms when the patient is in a much more agitated or much more aggressive kind of phase. So here family members need to understand the symptoms. There's a lot of in the initial stages, usually family members might be thinking that he's expressing of trying to talk, looking into the space, or trying to, unable to focus on their academic area, occupational area, as the passing phases of some stress in the family or academic stress. So as they move on, and when they see that there are full-blown symptoms, it is very hurting and painful for the family members to go through this process of seeing their family member into a much more disturbed kind of state. So a lot of guilt feelings or helplessness might get into the way of taking care of this family member who is affected with the condition. So it is important that the causes that I have mentioned in part 2 may not be the direct causes for bringing the illness, but they can act as predisposing factors. When there is a family vulnerability, they might actually act as a kind of contributing factors rather than they causing, the family members causing the illness. So look into it a much more hopeful way, and then help the family members to understand the course of illness, how the family interactions and the way a calmness or the quiet way of handling an affected family member is very important in working on the course of the illness over a period of time. So far, there is no cure for schizophrenia, but definitely there is a successful treatment to the extent that they can get back to as near normal a routine as based on all the interventions, medical as well as psychological interventions are utilized in a appropriate way at the right time. So looking into family interventions, the focus is mainly on regular medication follow-up and helping the client to take care of the medications, and someone, it is always better that someone supervise the intake of the medication, and then the other aspects of how to recognize a relapse. When there is a relapse, when there are initial symptoms, in spite of regular medication, there can be a relapse period where based on other family factors or we can't always identify and pinpoint that this is the reason for the relapse, but these are the possible precipitating, possible predisposing factors. So when there is a relapse, it is important that the caretaker be understanding the kind of symptoms that they have. So when they come to us, they are not even aware that these symptoms are called come under this particular diagnosis, and it is important that they are aware of that these are the symptoms called as positive symptoms. And then when the positive symptoms reduce in their intensity, there is a possibility of depression. Not necessarily every client has to go through negative symptoms, but it is important to keep a watch on this possibility where there is a risk of suicide with the negative symptoms. So usually we call it post-psychotic depression. So it is important that the caretaker is keeping a watchful eye on these family member who is affected with this condition. And then for them, the knowledge of the symptoms, the knowledge of the kind of family environment, if there are identified expressed emotions like we have discussed in our part 2, over-involved emotional expression or being highly critical in their way of talking, and then negative way of communications need to be controlled, and a calm family environment is very important for the recovery of the client. So looking at the self-care of these clients, they are usually, even after the active symptoms come down, they are usually more sleepy, and then they are considered to be lazy and not actually trying to kind of become active. But it is important, even though there are no symptoms, because of the side effect of the medication and because of the intense kind of changes that has happened in the brain neurochemical system and the kind of disturbance that has happened in their functionality, all these affect the clients in the post-symptomatic phase. And then it is important to gently put them back into the routine based on their functional level, immediately trying to send them back. If let us say that they are half the way left the engineering course or some other professional course, once the symptoms are settled, sending them back to the hostel or trying to kind of pressurize them to prepare for the exams, all these are not very encouraging, or they're not recommended as helping the client. So it is important that the client fully recover, and then the recovery is maintained for at least 5 to 6 months, and take your psychiatrist advice. Is the person is capable of continuing the course, or we should look for another course that will help him to gain the kind of productive lifestyle. So jumping immediately back to what the person has left off the way is something that need to be looked into very seriously. And maintaining an active routine based on the functional level, keeping an active routine, involving them into the daily course or involving them into the kitchen activities, and then day-to-day functioning, the routine has to be much more productive rather than putting them into some leisure activities or some kind of activities that are non-productive, putting them into a kind of productive activities, like if they are interested into some hobbies, or if they are interested in pursuing the kind of interesting hobbies that they have enjoyed previously, or if they have any hobbies related to kind of giving a kind of productive kind of activities, looking at based on their skills that they have gained in the period before the attack or before the symptoms started. So giving them a confidence or bringing their positive self-esteem is more important than just spending the time into non-productive activities. So here it is very important that the daily routine is maintained, and also looking at normalizing the family environment, not neglecting the other needs of the other family members, and then trying to make the patient's illness as the center of focus is very, very important aspect. So it is important that the normal family environment, trying to get back to the normal family environment, plays a very important role. And then, yes, the person who is affected is not actively contributing, but how to go about it has to be looked into it as a family team approach, rather than trying to immediately set the person back into their previous non-symptomatic routine. So there are other family members who come with us asking if they are like say in their 25 or 30 years of age, whether marriage will bring, or some people will actually marry them and then come with their spouses as to how to handle their lives. Marriage is not a cure for the psychiatric illness. Marriage involves a lot of responsibilities, and then it can actually add more stress, not only to the client, as well as involving an innocent spouse also will add much more additional stress to the person who is unaware of the illness. So hiding the illness and trying to get them married so that there will be a caretaker when the parents are old, these kind of thoughts need to be looked into the long-term effects of it, rather than impulsively getting into it. And sometimes the sibling will be the caretaker who might be taking care of the affected brother or sister, and then it also affects their family functioning. And it is important that the spouse of the sibling know that there is a person, that there is a responsibility to take care of it. It is always important that something that involves a long-term care, it is always openly and honestly discussed, might bring in a better way of handling it, rather than hiding the basic important information and trying to get somehow married, be it the patient or the siblings, and not necessarily that the sibling or the offspring of the family member will always get the psychiatric illness, provided that they take care of the other family factors and other social factors that I have mentioned in our previous episodes. So this is something that I wanted to share today. The same family who can be a kind of stress factor can be a supporting factor, and the role of family interventions and family counseling plays a very important role in the long-term care of these kind of psychiatric clients. And medication is the most important part that they need to follow up for long term or many years, rather more than 5 years or 6 years. Sometimes it might have to be a lifetime course of follow up. So this is what I wanted to share in today's session. Hope these episodes will give a kind of a better idea about the family factors, as well as how they can take care of their affected member in a much more long-term and more productive way. And thank you.